Chapter 14 Stolen Treasure. The next day came the shrining. All the countryside for miles about gathered in the Abbey church for the great event. After prime and high mass, which the king and queen and all the court attended, a great procession was formed. Acolytes with crosses and novices holding candles and swinging censers came first, then all the officials of the monastic community, the obediendaries as they were called. Behind them, in a cloud of fresh incense swung from another group of censer-bearers, walked Abbot Robert, King Henry, and Queen Eleanor, and 6 tall and stalwart monks bearing on their shoulders the huge hallowed oak wherein rested the bones of Arthur and Guinevere. Monks and lay brothers followed, marching 2 by 2. Hugh was there, and Dickon somewhat further behind with Brother Guthlac, and other lay people belonging to the monastic family. All around the great church of St. Mary the procession marched. The rich voices of the choir rang full and true. The metallic rattle of change from the swinging censers sounded rhythmically. Clouds of incense filled the air, and through it innumerable candle lights flickered and glinted like stars in a mist. The nave of the church was filled with lay folk, both high and low, and when the procession had passed 3 times around it, they joined in, following the last of the monastery people, out through the great arched central doors. The singing increased in volume as every voice took up the strains of the old familiar hymn, Jerusalem the Golden. Then it thinned and straggled as the marchers wound around the churchyard, circled the little old deserted chapel of St. Joseph, and entered the cloisters, where it drew together again around the garth. Then at last they returned to the church. As many as could get inside the doors did so. The king and queen and a few other important personages stood near the chancel with the abbot and the priests who would perform the ceremony. To the left, just where the north transept began, stood a large tomb of shining black marble, freshly built. After the sprinkling of holy water, much censing, and the intoning of suitable prayers, the great oak coffin was lowered into this. A slab of exquisitely veined stone was closed upon it, and the shrining drew to an end. Hugh and Dickon had craned their necks and squirmed their way through the crowd until they could see and hear without difficulty. In the middle of the service, Hugh suddenly became conscious of Dickon's fingers digging him in the ribs. "Do you know what?" said the boy in a whisper, after he had gotten his friend's attention. "There's something else that ought to be in that tomb. King Arthur's sword." "Excalibur!" exclaimed Hugh, so loud that several turned and frowningly bade the boys be quiet. "That's so," he whispered in a lower tone. "I'd forgotten about the sword. It ought to have been here. You are right. But I don't suppose Bleharis would have ever consented to give it up." "Well, he left the sword on the altar steps of the old church that last time we saw him here. Remember?" Hugh nodded. "I'm going to see if it's still there." Dickon began at once to wriggle through the crowd toward one of the doors, but Hugh seized his sleeve and detained him. "You can't get it now," he whispered decidedly, "and even if you did, who would believe it was King Arthur's sword without stopping to examine it? And anyway, it belongs to Bleharis. But Dickon had worked himself free and was lost in the crowd. Hugh turned back to the ceremony of the shrining, feeling somewhat uneasy. When at last it was all over, he moved with the crowd out of the church building, and began looking around for Dickon. Suddenly he appeared at his elbow, and Hugh was relieved to see that he was not carrying the huge iron-hilted sword. Appearing with it at that particular moment would have been as awkward as it would have been spectacular. "Oh, so it wasn't there?" said he. "Doubtless Bleharis has taken it off again. Well, come on, let's go over to the guest-house. Maybe we can catch a glimpse of Eileen." "Hugh," said Dickon, and his voice sounded so strange that the boy stopped dead and stared at him. "It was there, on the altar steps, and a lot more things too. The crystal cross, and my sapphire altar, and the very best and most precious of the old hermit's treasures, all there, laid out on the steps and floor. What on earth do you think is going on?" "I can't imagine. Do you suppose Bleharis himself brought them here? Or somebody else? And what for? I want to see them." Hugh started to turn back, but just at that moment they both spied the little lady Eileen walking across the greensward toward them. She had her dog, Kenny, under her arm, but her face looked so sad and woebegone as she drew closer that all thought, save concern for her, promptly left their minds. They greeted her courteously, Dickon pulling off his cap and making a quick ducking bow as if he were in a hurry to get it over with. "Fair damsel," said Hugh, with his accustomed ease, "is there aught amiss? We could fain help you, if it be possible." "By all the saints," Dickon broke in emphatically, "if anyone hath done thee wrong, or made thee sorrowful, I'll— He left his sentence unfinished, there being no adequate threat to offer in his present state of ignorance.
"It's about Kenny," said the girl miserably. "They say I have got to give him up. He chewed my Lady Imogene's slipper last night, and he is always getting underfoot, and he yapped at one of the page boys too, and sometimes he runs away. But I love him, and I can't just leave him anywhere. He would starve or be killed by wild beasts."
The tears were flowing fast now. Dickon looked questioningly at Hugh, who nodded back. "Could you now? Would you leave him with us?" he said. "He could live at the Grange with Brother Guthlac, and we, Hugh and I, would take care of him ourselves, and—
"And he wouldn't be the first homeless creature to find refuge in Glaston,"
Hugh added, with a wiry little smile, thinking of his own desolate state when he was brought to the Abbey more than a year ago.
"That is most kind and gracious of you."
The damsel dried her tears, but still regarded them questioningly.
You would be very gentle and good to him? And the Grange, would he be happy and comfortable there? I can't bear to part with him, but it would be good to know he was with friends who loved him."
A trembling little sigh, which was half a sob, made the boys more eager than ever to do her a service. "After dinner we will take you to the Grange, and show you. It is a good place, and Brother Guthlac has a way with little beasts, big ones too for that matter, and whenever Kenny was not with us, he would be with him." Dickon wondered, as he talked, whether Guthlac would indeed allow them to keep a pet at the Grange, but, well, he would just have to. At that moment the bell rang for the noon meal, and after it, when court and monastery folk were all settling down for an hour or two of afternoon quiet, the two boys went again to the guest-house to wait until Eileen could slip away unnoticed from the ladies and tire women and join them. Brother Guthlac smiled good-humouredly enough when the three appeared at the Grange and made their request. Then they sought out a warm, comfortable corner in an unused stall, fixed a bed, and let the little dog play about and sniff his new surroundings. "It won't be like living at court," declared Dickon. Eileen made a face indicative of her extreme distaste.
"I am glad of that," said she, "and he will be glad. I know he will. Deary me, but I am weary of all the curtsying and mouthings and mannerings, all the stiff clothes and stiff ways. Often and often I wish I were a simple village maid in a borough frock, and could sit at ease, or play all the day long. It is not easy to be a lady."
"Nor to be a knight," added Hugh sympathetically. "But I would like to be a knight," said Dickon. "And if I were, would you be my lady?" He blushed to the roots of his hair as the words came tumbling out. He had not meant to say that at all, and now maybe she would be offended and not leave her dog with him. She was not, however, for she smiled in the friendliest fashion, and taking the 2 yellow ribbons that bound her thick braids of brown hair, she gave one to Dickon and then handed the other to Hugh.
"You shall both be my knights," said she generously. "I give you each a token of my favour. If ever I am in danger or distress, I will send for one of you, if I can, and if ever you have need of a friend at court, send me my yellow ribbon, that I may know, and then I will do for you whatsoever I can."
She spoke graciously and gravely, and the boys gave heed to her words, pleased and touched by them. Then she picked up Kenny, kissed him on his soft white ear, and placed him in Dickon's arms.
"We shall be going early in the morning," said she. "Take him now, and get better acquainted, so I can think of him being happy with you."
The little beast was friendly enough. He was a young dog, and he licked Dickon's ear and romped and played with both boys in eager, impartial puppy fashion. It was agreed between the three that Dickon should stay at the Grange and keep Kenny amused, while Hugh escorted the Lady Eileen back to the guest-house, a mark of really unselfish devotion on Dickon's part, for he would have dearly loved the few extra moments of the young damsel's society.
"You are courtly born, are you not?"
Eileen said to Hugh as they walked across the greensward together. "Ay, that I am," said Hugh, but added nothing further.
"Then you will surely be a knight some day. Remember my favour. I am truly in earnest in giving it to thee."
"I will indeed remember," said Hugh, "whether I be a knight or no." They said little more, and when they had reached the guest-house gate, Hugh had barely time to bid the little lady a courteous farewell before she was whisked away by one of the Queen's ladies, who had evidently been looking for her. Dickon spent the whole night in the Grange barn in order to make sure that Kenny should not be lonely. He rolled himself up in a blanket on a pile of hay, and slept so soundly that, even if the little beast had howled in despair and friendlessness, he never would have known it. But in the morning he found his small charge contentedly hunting rats in a cobwebby corner, apparently very willing to change the luxuries of court life for a much more exciting, if simpler one in the monastic Grange. King Henry and his court were ready betimes, and the abbot and the chief monastery folk were already gathered around the guest-house and the south gate to bid them farewell and God-speed. Hugh and Dickon soon spied the Lady Eileen in the chattering crowd of women who surrounded the Queen. Dickon managed to get her ear and attention sufficiently to signal that Kenny was well and flourishing, but what with all the stamping horses, lurching litters, and servants rushing madly about, they could not approach her close enough to do more than wave to her as she mounted her small, restless palfrey and went clattering by. At last all the visitors had got off and away. The outer gate was shut, the porter went wearily back to his post beside it, and the rest of the brothers prepared to take up their routine wherever they had left it. Hugh felt Brother John's hand upon his shoulder as he turned rather listlessly toward the cloisters. "Come, boy," said he, "there is much to be done. Thou dost handle the script passing well by now, and I would set thee to copying a breviary. We have need of many more." He sounded as if there had been no break in the monastic days, and Hugh felt the security of customary tasks slipping over him again, not unhappily.